everybody, it's Eric Pappenfuss. It's Friday, so it must be a buy day, and today we are going to talk about the 60th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, which is coming up this Wednesday. It's a remarkable moment in time, and it's produced literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of books, Amanda. But I wanted to talk about it because, as far as I know, no one has ever looked at the assassination from the vantage point of what books were actually in the Texas School Book Depository. As a bookseller ourselves, I thought we could shed some light on that. And we've had a couple very interesting books related to that moment in history come into the store in the last week. So let's get right to it, shall we? Sure. All right. I want to show you the two really interesting books first. Now, the first is a copy of the Warren Commission, which in and of itself is not that interesting. This is the edited version, the one-volume version. This is the version that came out in the aftermath of the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, right? Mm-hmm. What's interesting about the book, however, is that it is signed by Gerald Ford, President Gerald Ford, who was the last surviving member at the time of the Warren Commission. And Ford, very interestingly, made a lot of money at the end of his life in signing and creating a limited edition version of the Warren Commission. He stood by the findings of the Warren Commission for his entire life, and in the end, he was doing limited editions and signings, 1 out of 3,000 copies again and again and again. He also, very interestingly, wrote a book right after the Warren Commission came out back in 1964 about Lee Harvey Oswald. And we also received a copy of that book, Amanda. It's called Portrait of the Assassin by Congressman Gerald Ford. And let's get to the back of that book, because there you can see a little bit of Ford in all his glory. Now, this came out immediately after the Warren Commission was released. And today it's a pretty hard book to find, and it's even harder to find when it is also autographed by Gerald Ford in the aftermath of that JFK. Now, this one is a particularly interesting autograph, Amanda, because look, it also comes with some stationery from Lee Simmons, who was Ford's personal aide at the time, saying he was happy to get the book signed for us. Better than a certificate of authenticity, wouldn't you say? A real signature. Now, this book is very, very odd because it is about, half of it is about transcripts, like the Warren Commission, but then the other half is sort of a novel. It reads like a novel, and it's got this interesting writing style. Would you like to hear a little bit of?
Do you think Ford wrote it himself?
I think Ford had a partner, a ghostwriter, this guy, John Stiles, who served as his campaign manager and actually did Nixon for America. So
probably wrote
very interesting. Yeah, wrote a lot of the book. But let me just give you a little flavor for what it sounds like, okay? How could such a coincidence happen that he would get a job in a building whose 6th-floor window would make a perfect vantage point for murder? Why weren't there other people on the floor at the moment? Who would have thwarted his plans? Why? Yeah, that's pretty much how the book goes.
Sure.
At any rate, as I say, Ford stuck to it, and he's known in conspiracy circles. Ford is for a couple reasons, Amanda. One, Ford was Nixon and J. Edgar Hoover's spy on the commission, and while the commission was going, basically gave them live updates as to what was happening. And two, it was Ford who was responsible for the magic bullet theory. He actually had the Warren Commission slightly change the wording, which had to do with the angle in which the bullet entered the president's body to allow for it to be a single bullet as opposed to potentially multiple shooters. And this has conspiracy theorists really upset to this day. Let's watch a little bit of a clip of Ford at the same time he's signing these books defending the Warren Commission.
I have seen no new evidence in the 30-some years that have transpired between Kennedy's assassination and today, no new evidence that would change my mind.
Now, our next book, Amanda, is particularly interesting because it is one of the books that would have been in the Texas Book Depository at the time of the assassination.
Maybe this book can tell us what happened.
One of those boxes. Well, it may not tell us what happens, but I think it can tell us what Oswald was likely reading at the time of the assassination. Now, Oswald, it is said, got a job basically as a book puller and book wrapper in October right before the assassination. So literally just about 1 month before the assassination. He, it is said, basically got the job as sort of the last thing he could do, and it was just very random that he got the job. But in reality, I think Oswald would have enjoyed working there because the entire depository was filled with books, many of whom the sort of powers that be had wanted to ban and stop from getting in the hands of Texas school children. More on that in a moment. But it had a lot of books that were based on the latest economic theory, and that economic theory shaded towards the Marxist end of the spectrum. And Oswald claimed to be not a communist, but a Marxist and a supporter of Cuba. Here's a clip of Oswald talking about his philosophical beliefs.
No, sir, I am not a communist, and I think that the red herring and so forth is rather ridiculous to toss into this conversation.
Then are you a Marxist?
Well, I have studied Marxist philosophy, yes, sir, and also other philosophers.
But are you a Marxist?
Well, I would very definitely say that I am a Marxist. That is correct. But that does not mean, however, that I'm a communist.
What is the difference between the two?
Well, there's a great deal of difference. Several American parties in several countries are based on Marxism, such as Ghana. Certain countries have characteristics of a socialist system, such as Great Britain with its socialized medicine. These, then, are the differences between an outright communist country and countries which adhere to leftist or Marxist principles.
Now, this book, Amanda, which was published just in 1962, let's take a look at this book. It's an interesting book because it's Mathematical Models of Economic Growth, published by McGraw-Hill. The Texas School Book Depository was basically a distribution center where publishers, including McGraw-Hill and a variety of other textbook publishers, would send their books, and then they would be sent on from there to the various schools in Texas that would read them. This book has one other interesting tidbit. It's actually printed here near Harrisburg at the Maple Press. Have you ever driven down 83 and seen the Maple Press Company sign?
I must have.
Well, it's there, and so it's published right here in central Pennsylvania, but it would have been shipped in big cartons to the Texas School Book Depository. This economist, Jan Tinbergen, goes on to win the Nobel Prize, and he's particularly famous because he develops a type of econometric theory which basically talks about policy and how policy should try and prevent enormous gaps in terms of wealth and in terms of wages earned between the top percents of the population and the bulk of the population. Sound a bit like Bernie Sanders?
Well,
just a little bit.
A little familiar.
Well, guess what he thought the dynamic needed to be to avoid catastrophe, revolution, and unrest in the streets? The top percent really should only earn about 5 times what the bottom percent does. Yeah, and that's just not the case today, is it? No. And you'd be surprised in these economic textbooks from 1962 just about how much commentary there was about communism versus Marxism. I've never really gone back and read these historical textbooks, but just give you a little sense. The means of development policy applied in different countries depends very much on the preferences of their governments with regard to the economic order. In communist countries, where a much larger portion of the means of production is publicly owned, a much larger number of means of policy are available than in non-communist countries. And at any rate, this is the type of book that Oswald could have been reading. It might have been the type of book that Oswald may have propped his revolver on as part of the sniper's perch. Here's a picture of the book boxes. Do you see the book boxes? Where he was near the 6th floor window. This comes out of the Warren Commission. Is this the econometric model right there in the box? We don't know, but we do know that the book was there in 1962. Now, Oswald was a book puller and a book wrapper. That meant that he would gather the books from the cartons, take them down to the wrapping room via elevator in this multi-story depository, and then wrap the books. And there's another sort of interesting aspect of the assassination which has to do with book wrapping that I thought I ought to comment on because we're professional book wrappers here at the Midtown Scholar. And that has to do with the famous bag that was used by Oswald to smuggle in the rifle, or so it is thought. And apparently the tape and the paper that were used for the bag matches the tape and the paper that they used to wrap the books in the depository, which means that Oswald would have premeditated and been able to bring that bag home with him at least the day before the murder in order to put the rifle in the bag and bring it back. A greater degree maybe of premeditation than previously thought. But there is this interesting other book, and I'll bring one more assassination conspiracy book. All these books are available at the Scholar right now, including Reasonable Doubt, which is very interesting, Amanda, because it shows the bag, and it shows why there's so much conspiracy associated with the Kennedy assassination. Here is the official lab report, which says that basically they tested the paper on the bag and they've determined that it is, in fact, consistent with the wrapping paper that was used at the Texas Book Depository. But later, when more records were released, a second version came out that said, well, it's not consistent. Can you see that? It's not consistent. Yeah. And how do you explain that? I don't know. But the conspiracy theories will continue to live on. But I can tell you that our book wrappers do a good job, and it's impossible to use packing tape without getting your palm prints or fingerprints on that packing tape, which is what they did. All right, we're going to end with a funny book today. It is also Thanksgiving. Amanda, are you doing a turkey?
Yes.
Okay. Do you cook your own turkey?
My parents will be cooking.
Well, do they like to tie up their turkey? Because if they do, they might enjoy 50 Shades of Chicken, which is a fantastic book because it talks all about how you can tie up the turkey. Now, I want you to ignore the background of this photo, Amanda,
it's kind of hard
and just look at how you should use the proper techniques for your turkey for Thanksgiving. It'll make the whole family laugh. Well, that does another edition of By Day Friday. I hope you'll watch next week and every week, Fridays at noon, for more adventures in the world of books.